All right, welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. In this chapter, we are building a content management system using object-oriented programming. In this video, we're going to get started on our model class, which is going to be a little bit convoluted, and we're not really going to see how it works yet. So it's going to be kind of a tough video to follow along, but just do your best. I will try to make sure I explain as well as I can the things that we're going to be doing. Also, please just comment, like, and subscribe. If you're enjoying the video, let me know, and it'll help me out, guys, if you will do that. Also, if you want some sweet merch like this this mug right here, this Free Skills mug, you can go to freeskills.life. You can also get these hats there. All right, enough plugging myself. Let's switch over to our screen here. Please excuse the noise that my air conditioner is making in the background. Excuse me. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new branch here for this video. So I'm gonna type git branch. I see all my local branches, and we are on video 16, it looks like. So let's get started by creating a new branch. I'm gonna do a git checkout -b of v16. The next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and push that to the remote GitHub repository by doing set upstream here. And we will do origin and v16. All right, now that we have done that, we are ready to roll for this video. So what we're going to do is, you know how we talked about there's three in an MVC. We have controllers, we have models, and we have views. Well, we've already gotten a good jump on our controller, which we're going to do more to that later. We also have our view, but we haven't created the base class for our models yet. And so we want to do that so that we can easily set up interaction with our database objects and add additional functionality that's beyond what our database class can do. It is more tailored to that type of object. And so what we're going to do here is just right click on core and create a new file, and we'll call this model.php. In the model.php, let's just go ahead and open some PHP tags, and the first thing we're going to do is assign a namespace for this. So we're going to give this a namespace of core, and then what we need to do here is we are going to be using the database. We're also going to be using, are we using PDO in this? Yes, we are. So we're going to use the database and PDO. So let's go ahead and just type use, and we'll do /PDO here. And then we're also going to use some of our core files. So we'll say core and /, and for now, I think the only thing we need is the database. So we'll just go ahead and do that. The next thing that we want to be able to do is just create our class. So this is going to be a class, and we're going to call it model. Now, this is a parent class. We're not going to go ahead and extend anything here. But let's create a couple of properties that we can use. So the first one is going to be a protected static property called table. We'll just go ahead and put an empty string there by default. The next thing that we're going to have is a protected static columns, and for now that let's just set that to false. And then we're going to have protected static, oh no, not static, this is just protected, and we're going to do underscore validation passed, and we're going to set that to true by default. And then we need another one for our errors. We'll set that to an empty array. And then we're also going to have something called skip update, and we'll set that equal to an empty array as well. Okay, so the first thing we want to be able to do is we want to be able to insert and update some of our models a lot easier than just calling this database. And one thing that we can do is, since our models are going to have a table, is we don't have to pass in that parameter with our update and our insert. We could just pass in values, so that would make it a little bit easier. And since those are super easy methods, let's just go ahead and knock those out now. So we can create those as public static function, and that will be an insert. And in the insert, we're just going to take in some values, and all we have to do here is get our database, and that will be equal to db get instance. Okay, and then we can run or just return our DB insert. And then for the table, we can actually just use the keyword static and then dollar table. Okay, so this will get our static property for the table of whatever class is calling this. And then the second thing we're going to pass in here is just pass down our values. And that's it. So that's all we need to do for the insert method for our model. Now let's go ahead and create another one for update. And that will take some values and conditions. So basically what we're doing with these wrapper functions is we're able to get rid of the necessity to pass in the table when we use these, because if we're using it from the context of a model, we know what that table is already. So we can just simply run those database functions and pass those in without us needing to define those. So again, we'll just pass in static table like that, and then we can pass down the values and the conditions from the parameters of the method within our model here. Okay, so now we've already created two methods that are going to be useful inside of our models. One thing that we don't have though is we haven't created a delete. Now in this project we're going to be using an actual delete, but we could extend this method later on to make it easily we can start using soft delete instead of a hard delete. And a soft delete is simply an update. So instead of actually deleting a row from a database, you can usually set some sort of boolean to true, and then your models would skip over those when they're searching, and then they could delete. Instead of an actual delete, it would actually be an update. But for now, we are going to skip that because we don't really need that for this project. We don't want to over engineer, but just know that that is an option, and separating this delete function out in the model would be the place you would start with that. All right, so then we can go ahead and set the table here to the static : table, and then let's build up some params here. So we're going to say our params. And inside of our params, we can pass in conditions, and we're going to say ID is equal to : ID, and then comma, our bind is going to be an associative array here called ID, and we're going to pass in this ID. So this in this context is the model. So this delete function is going to be on an instantiated object. So if we say, for instance, we build out an articles model and we want to delete an article, we can simply call this delete method right on that article, and it will delete it here. And so we can easily continue this on, but we're going to have to do something to build up our queries within our models. And so we're actually gonna do something really cool, and we're gonna build our own query builder in order to do this. So first and foremost, let's just kind of set up how this is going to work, and then this isn't going to work just yet because we need to build the query builder. But first, we're going to use the list, which is a built-in PHP function that I haven't explained yet. But what we can do with this is we can actually set these. Let me just explain it as we build it, because it's going to be a little confusing looking at it now. And we're going to create a static method here on the model called query param builder, and it's going to take in some params. In this case, the params are going to be this conditions and this bind, and we're going to pass that in. Now we got red squigglies because we haven't created this method yet, but this method is going to return it's actually going to return an associative array instead of one object, and the associative array is going to have two elements in it called SQL and bind. And what's cool about that is now we can, with this listing, we can take the key from the SQL from this return and assign it to a variable called cons. We're going to call it cons for short for conditions, and we're going to assign bind, the return of this, the bind, to our bind variable there. And then what we could do is say SQL is going to be equal to delete from, and then in this case we're just going to pass down our table, oops, like that, and then after the table, then we can actually just put in our cons right here. So this cons is going to come from this query builder, which we haven't done yet. And then we can just simply return db execute, and then we can pass in that SQL, and we can pass in our bind, just like that. And so that's super cool, but we have to build this up now, and this is going to be a kind of a big method because it's going to do a lot of really cool stuff. So let me go ahead and get going on that. And I don't know how much further in this video we'll get other than creating that, but we'll try. So we have the delete. So underneath that delete method, let's just create a public static function, and we called that query param builder. And this is going to take in some params, and this will be an empty array by default, so you don't have to pass anything in here. So then what we're going to do is at the top here, remember we want to return the SQL and we want to return the binds. So what we'll do here is we're just going to set our SQL equal to an empty string, and then we're going to set our bind equal to, and then we're going to use array key exists, and we're going to pass in the word bind, and we're looking, that is the needle, and in the haystack we're looking for that in our params. And this is a ternary operator, and we're going to say, hey, if that exists, just go ahead and set it to params bind. Else, what I want to do is just set it to an empty array. So we're going to have this SQL and this bind, and we're going to return that. And so let's go ahead and set up that return so I can show you how it works with this list command up here. So what we're going to do here is just return an associative array, and we're going to return SQL. And that will be our SQL statement, and then we're also going to return bind, and that will be equal to our bind array. So we're returning an associative array. Now we don't have to use this list. We could have easily just set this to a parameter, and then we could have called the key, but I think this list command is really cool, where it kind of extracts these into their own variables here that we can just use thereon in that method. All right, so this doesn't really do anything yet, so we need to go ahead and what all do we want to do here? Well, let's create some comments. I would like to be able to handle joins in this, so we could build up some joins. I would like to be able to handle some where conditions. I want to do grouping. I want to do ordering, so we'll do order. I want to do limit. I want this to be able to do offset. And I think that's it for now. If we do these things right here, we can build up a pretty nice query with this query param builder. And so our models are going to revolve around this query builder, and we're going to do everything from our delete to our finds and find first and all that using this query param builder. So let's get going here. Let's do a couple easier ones here, and let's start with the where. So we're gonna have this pattern where we say, hey, if array key exists, and we're gonna search for this our conditions. So if that exists in the params array, then we are going to build up our where statement. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say the SQL is going to concatenate equal, and we're going to do a space where, and then we're going to pass in conditions like this. So that is going to add our conditions. Now the conditions we don't have yet, so let's go ahead and do that. The conditions are going to be equal to params conditions. So if it exists, then we're going to just say where and then conditions, just pass them right in. And so that will build that into our SQL statement. So let's do a couple of the other easy ones here, and then we'll do the joins last. We're going to do the same thing with group. So let me give it a little bit of space here. And with our group, we'll do the same thing. We'll say if array key exists, then in this one, we're going to look for the word group. And we're looking for that in our params array. And if that exists, then we're going to add to our SQL statement. Well, we could say group here, and that's going to be equal to params group. And then our SQL statement will just be dot equals to concatenate on. We'll do a space, and then we're going to do in all caps group by, and then we will just go ahead and pass our group down into that like that. So that will build up this. We're going to continue to do the same thing with order and limit. So if array key exists, order, and we're looking for that in the params array as well, then we're going to say order is equal to params order, and SQL is going to be dot equals, and then here we're going to say order by space, and then we'll pass in the order. So what we're doing here is basically we're going to be able to pass in some sort of params into this, and it's going to take these keywords like condition, bind, order, limit, offset, joins, and it's going to build out our query param based upon all that, so that we can dynamically build this up as complex as we want. Or, you know, we might have to add more functionality to this, but for our project, this is going to be plenty good. So here for the limit, we'll say if array key exists, limit, and then we're going to look in the params there. And again, limit will just be equal to params limit. And then our SQL is going to concatenate on space, and then we'll type the word limit and then limit. So see, this isn't too complex yet, but you can imagine how we can use this to build up our queries this same way. So offset, again, the same pattern. We probably could have done some sort of loop here. If array key exists, and we'll say offset params, and then here we're going to say offset is equal to params offset, and then the SQL is going to be dot equals, and then we'll do space offset space, and then we'll use our offset variable there. So this SQL, we could pass into our conditions. We can pass in offset, limit, order, group, where, which would be called conditions, and it will build all of this up in our query. Now the other thing that we need though is our joins, and our joins need to be up here at top here. And so the joins are the most complex part of this. And so let's just kind of show you what a join would look like. I want to pass in an array of arrays so basically each join is going to be an array, and it's going to look like this, where we're going to say table 2, and then it's going to have something like the on condition here, so it'd be like table1.id is equal to table2.key or something like that. And then we're going to be able to pass in a table alias if we would like. And then we will pass in the type of join. So in this case, it could be a left join. So this right here is just the format that we're going to use, and we can join on as many tables as we want in this fashion. So what we're going to do here is we are going to wrap this whole thing. We're going to say if array key, just like before. So if array key exists, joins in the params array, then we're going to go ahead and add these. I'm going to give me a space here. And so the joins, like I said, is going to be an array. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to say joins is equal to params joins. And then we're going to say for each joins as join. So it's going to take each one of these individually, and this will be like the join for the first iteration of this for each loop. And then we're going to go ahead and do something like this. Join table is going to be equal to the first element in that array, so join 0. And then the join on is going to be equal to join 1. And then the alias is going to be, we're going to set up a default for that, so we don't have to pass that in. So we'll say join alias is equal to, and then we're going to do a ternary operator, and we're going to say if is set join 2, then we're just going to set it equal to join 2. Else, we're just going to set it empty to an empty string there. The next thing is the join type. Now join type, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say, hey, if is set join, in this case 3, then we are going to put a string here, and we're going to say join 3 in curly brackets, and then do a space join. Else, we're just going to do a regular join here. So we could put inner join if we want there, but that's how that's going to work. And I'm missing my closing bracket there on that array index. Then we are going to add to our SQL statement, and we'll do a dot equals to concatenate on. And this concatenation is going to start with a space, and then we're just going to pass in our join type first. So that'll be left join or right join or inner join or whatever. So that's our join type, and then a space, and then we're going to do a join table, space, and then we're going to do join alias, and then we're going to type space and then the word on, and then we're going to do the join on. Now what this will do is for every join in our joins parameter, it will create this onto our SQL statement. So this query param builder will now be able to take any of these keys, whether it be offset, limit, order, join, conditions, bind, and joins, and it will build out our SQL statement based upon that. Okay, so I know that we're not showing an example of using this yet, so it's a little bit difficult to understand what we're doing, but as we go through and use this query param builder, I think it's going to become obvious here what we're doing. But if you're a little confused right now, I wouldn't get too worked up about that. Let's see, what other methods? Let's see how long we are in the video so far. So we're at 23 minutes. I might make this video a little bit longer, and we might try to hammer through a few more of these. The other thing I want to be able to do with my the other thing I'd like to be able to do is I want to be able to do finds and find first and find by IDs. And so what we can do with that is we can set up some selects. And let me see here how this is working. Okay, so we're going to actually do another builder here that's a little bit separate. We're going to call this public static function select builder. And this is going to build up our select statements. This is also going to take some params equal to an empty array. And this, what did I do here? I got these brackets all weird. How'd that happen? They go after the closing paren there. All right, so the select builder is going to be pretty, we're actually going to use the query param builder, so we won't have to do all of that, but we do want to build out the beginning of it. And so what we're going to do here is say columns is equal to array key exists, and then we're going to look for the word columns inside of the params. So now we can pass columns into that params array. And if that exists there, this is a ternary operator, we are going to just return params columns, else we're going to return a star. So this will make select star or select columns here. Then the table is just going to be equal to the static property here called table. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our SQL here. So we'll say SQL is equal to, and then we can say, we can build our selects by saying select. And then what we're going to do here is, we're going to pass in our columns parameter. So that will be star if nothing's passed in. Otherwise, it'll be a list of our columns. So select star or columns, and then it's from, and then we will put in our table. So next, what we want to do is we want to be able to build up that SQL, the conditions. And so let's do another list here, and we're going to say SQL, and we're going to assign that to some conditions, and our bind, and that will assign that to bind. And that is going to, we're going to use our query param builder that we just built. So we'll say self query param builder, and we're going to pass in the rest of the params into that. Then what we can do is concatenate onto our SQL statement our conditions. So we can just dot equals cons here, and this will, what this will do is create our select columns from table, and then go down here, and whatever else we've built onto that will be concatenated onto that. So then all we have to do at that point is we're going to use this the same way, is we're going to return an array here, an associative array, and we'll return SQL as a key, and we'll pass SQL into that, and then we're also going to return the bind, and we will just return bind there. So now we can use either the select builder for our selects or the query param builder for everything. Even our select builder is going to use this. So we'll be able to use our select builder with all of these other options. In addition to, we could pass in our columns and specify which columns we would like to get back. Okay, so now that we have that, we can build out our find and our find first stuff really easily. So let's go ahead and, where do I want to put that? I think I want to put that underneath our delete method here. So let's do a public static function called find, and this will take some params, but it'll be a default of an empty array here. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to set up our database. So we're going to use db equals get instance. So now we have our database instance, and we have some methods. Actually, I don't know if we created the methods. We might have to create those still. Yes, we do. So we need to be able to, we didn't talk about this before, but PDO has something super powerful that we can actually, instead of doing a fetch object, we can do a fetch class. And what it will do is build out one object from our class for every row that we return. So for example, instead of returning just a regular object, we can actually return a model object. So we can get a list of every row from our database, but instead of it just being a regular object, it could be a model object, and then we can have our methods from our models available to us just on each one of those objects. And so, but in order to do that, we need to be able to have access to change this fetch type and set this class. So in the DB, go ahead and open up DB class. We need some setters. So let's go down here to the bottom underneath these these getters here, and let's just create a couple things. We're going to create public function set class, and that will take a class name, and we will just say this class is equal to class. Okay, so it's just a basic setter method here, and we're going to do the same thing with what do we call this? Set fetch type. So we can do set fetch type is equal to, or I'm sorry, we'll do some parameters here, and we'll do fetch. We'll just call it type here, and we're going to say this fetch type is equal to type. Now with these two setters inside of our model, we can actually use those now to set up the DB to use that. So we're going to say DB set class, and what we're going to pass into that is the there's a built-in PHP thing called get called class, and that's a function, and this will get the class name for whatever we for whatever class calls this find method. It'll set that class type in the database. The next thing that we want to be able to do is we will do the DB set fetch type, and then in this case we want to use the PDO constant here, so it's a PDO, and then instead of fetch object that we normally use, we're going to do fetch underscore class. And this is the magic right here of our model. This right here is super cool, and you don't even realize it yet, but you will. Okay, so now that we have that set up, then we're going to do our list function right here, and we're going to get our SQL and assign that to an SQL, and we're going to get the bind, and we're going to assign that to the bind, and that is going to come from the self select builder, and we're going to pass down those params right here. Okay, so this is actually equal, oops, wrong spot, as equal self select builder, and then we're just going to return DB, and we're going to use this is going to return results. So we're going to use the DB query method, and we're going to pass in the SQL and the bind right here, and then we're going to chain on the results method. So this find will return results from this DB query, and we're using the select builder to build up our SQL and our binds, and so that is pretty cool. So there we go. The next thing that we want to be able to do, and let's create we're going to end up doing this quite often, and I don't want to we're actually going to do this whole thing quite often. So let's create, I don't want to duplicate a lot of code, so let's just go ahead and create a get DB class here. So let's do you know what, let's do a protected function here, and we'll do a static function, and this will be get DB, and it's going to take we're going to pass in this set fetch class, and that's going to be equal to let's set that equal to true by default, or you know what, let's set this to false by default. And then what we'll do here is we're going to say DB is equal to DB get instance, and then if set fetch class is true, then we're going to do these other things right here. Like this. and then we're going to just return db here. So then in all of these cases, instead of using our db get instance, instead what we can do is we can do our db is going to be equal to self, you know what, let's call it static get db. And in these two cases, we're just going to return, we won't pass anything in there. So we should be able, in all of these cases, just to do that, get db. But then in our find function here, instead of having to do all of this now, we can just do this, and then we'll pass in true for our set object, our set class settings. So this will actually get the database and set it up the way that we want, so that we can get a list back as instantiated model objects. All right, so next, our find first method is very similar to our find method. So let's do a public static function find first. It's going to take some params, and we'll give that default an empty array. And then inside of here, let's get our db. So we're going to say db is equal to static get db, and also we will set that to true because I want an instantiated object back. Then we can just say list, and we can get our SQL, and we will do our bind, and that is going to be equal to the self select builder, and we'll pass down the params there. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to set results equal to db, and again we're going to use the query here. Yeah, that's fine. We'll use the query, and we'll say SQL, and then bind, and then we're going to use the results. We're going to chain on that, and then we're going to return. We want to know if is set results 0, then we want to return results 0, else we're going to just return false. Okay, so this is going to query and get the parameters based upon, it's the same as the find here, but we're just going to return just the first element in that, or if there isn't one, we're going to just return false. The next thing that I want to do is we're going to do a find by ID, which is just going to use this find first, but it'll give us a quicker way of getting an object just by its ID. So public static find by ID, and that's going to take an ID, and then we're just going to return self find first, and then that's going to take an array, and inside of that array we're going to pass in conditions, and our conditions are going to be where ID is equal to ID, and our bind is going to be our bind in this case will be ID, and then we're going to pass down that ID, and this will bind that so we don't have to worry about SQL injection. And that's it. This find by ID. Now why doesn't it like this? Public static, and that's because I forgot the keyword function. There we go. And there we go. So now we have built a find method, a find first method, a find by ID. We have a delete, an insert, and an update. So we're building out quite a bit of functionality here that's going to make working with our model objects super sweet. I think though we're going to do one more while we're doing these finds, and then in the next video we're going to work on our saves. So we're going to have a special method called save, to where we can either create or update based upon if it already existed or if it's new. But let's just do one more here, and what I want to be able to do here is find the total. So we're going to do public static function find total, and it's going to take params, which will also be an empty array by default. Okay, and what this find total is going to do is it's going to use the same parameter builder. So we're going to use our query param builder to find this, but instead of selecting a bunch of results, we're just going to get back an integer here of how many rows match that. So the first thing that we need to be able to do is if there are a limit and offset passed into here, we need to remove those so that the limit and offset doesn't, we want to find the total number, right? That's why it's called find total. So we'll say unset, and we're going to unset the params limit, and we will also do the same thing for params offset. All right, so now the offset and limit won't affect our total because we've removed them from the params. The next thing we'll do is say table is equal to static table, and then we're going to build out an SQL query. So what we can say here is SQL is equal to, and then we're going to just do a select count star as total from, and then we're going to pass in our table here. And then we want to be able to pass conditions into this as well. So what we're going to do is use our list thing here. I love this list thing. And we're going to pass we're going to set that SQL to a conditions array, and then we'll do the bind. We'll set that to a bind variable, and that's going to come from self query param builder, and we'll pass down our params from there, and then we can simply join on to our SQL statement. So we can do a dot equals to concatenate on, and we're going to concatenate on our conditions just like that. The next thing that we want to do is we need to get our database set up. And this can just be a regular fetch object. So we're just going to do db is equal to static, and then we're going to do get db like that. We won't pass true into that. And then we're going to say results is equal to our db. And in this case, we're going to use our queries method, and we're going to pass in the SQL and the bind array like that. And then we're going to say total is equal to, and then we're going to say results get row count like that. And that is this. So if that is greater than 0, then we're going to return or set that equal to results and then we're going to use our results method, which will return all the results, and then we're going to get the first element of that, and then we're going to get the total from that. Else we're just going to get we're going to set it to 0. So this total right here is basically what it's doing. It's going to say, hey, is the get row count, is that greater than 0? And if it is, it's going to assume that there are results. So it's going to use this results method in our database, get the first element of that, and then since we set up here we have this as total, then this should be a property on that std class here, and then we're just getting whatever that returns. Otherwise, if this doesn't exist, we're just going to return 0. Okay, so then all we have to do at that point is just return total like that. So we have made a crap ton of methods that we aren't able to show off just yet because we haven't built out enough functionality to show you. And I understand that this may be a little confusing, but hopefully once we build out some actual models and start using them, we'll come back and I'll explain line by line how this works. But hopefully you're able to follow along a little bit. And if you're a little behind, that's fine. Just understand that right now we're just basically building out some insert, update, delete, and reads, so we can do our basic CRUD operations inside of our models, including a find first, a find by ID, and a find total. In the next video, what we're going to do is continue to build out more functionality in this model so that we can save. And when we save, we want to save in a way that like is smart. So it's going to say, hey, if I just create a model object, like an article object, and I set all the properties and I hit save, well, it needs to know if that's a new, and if it's new, it needs to insert it into our database. Else, if it's just trying to update one that already exists, then we're going to do the update instead. And so the save is going to be kind of smart, and it'll know whether to do an update or a delete. The other thing that we're going to do with that save thing that's really cool is later we're going to do stuff like dynamically setting the timestamps if they exist when they hit save. We're also going to do validation, so we can actually do form validation in our models instead of inside of our controllers and writing out for every single one. We can just do that on a model level, and then when it goes to save, it can validate and make sure that everything is good to go before it tries to save it to the database. So we're going to do a lot of really cool stuff with that. And so I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video where we'll continue to build up our model, which is going to be one of the most important parts of our thing here. And what's really cool about this is if you guys just include this core directory and the index and htaccess in any one of your projects, you can start building out your controllers, models, and views, and you can use all of this functionality going forward to make building websites super fast, super safe, and super convenient. But it is kind of a process building it up to begin with, so I understand that this is going to be a little bit of a longer project and a more advanced, but I think it's important to go through because when you get in the real world, you're going to probably be using what you would call an MVC framework, either like Laravel or Falcon or CodeIgniter or something like that. We're just kind of building our own framework. It's really lightweight, and it's not going to be as powerful as any of those, but at least you can see under the hood how they work, and you can manipulate and change and update functionality as you see fit for your own projects. So right now this is pretty sweet. Guys, if you're enjoying this, give me a comment below, give me a like. Go ahead and subscribe. 90% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed, which is super surprising to me. I don't want you to miss anything because we don't want to get behind. All right, so let's go ahead and push this up to GitHub. So I'm going to do a git status here. And we basically just modified our core DB and added a new model class. So we're going to do a git add here. And if I do a git status again, you can see what is ready to be committed. So we'll commit that with our git commit. But we'll also give it a git commit message here. And you know what? I'm going to do it without doing the commit message just to show you what happens. So we'll do git commit and hit enter. And now it's going to force us to do a commit message. And the way this is actually opening up software called Vim. So right here, I'm going to just hit I to go into insert mode. And we're just going to say created our model object. And then I'll hit escape to get out of insert mode and hit shift ZZ, and that will save that. And now I can do a git push. So that -m stops you from having to open that terminal editor going into Vim. So that's why I usually do the -m, because you can do it all in one line or one step. And then I'm gonna do a git push here. And it says that everything is up to date because of course I just did a git push. So I don't know why I did it again. But I'm also going to check out main here. And we will do a git merge v16 and do a git push on the main branch as well. All right, guys, so I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you're having fun. I know I am. And although it's a little weird for me just sitting here because I'm sitting here in my office all by myself talking to you guys, but you're not actually here with me. I'm looking at a camera and talking into a microphone. So it's somewhat fun, but I'd rather do it in person. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.